Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Liquid Weekly podcast. And I have to say, with me as always is my co-host Taylor Page.
You have to.
No,
You
I
have
didn't.
to. That's
I
what you
don't have
said. You
to.
said I have to say it. You can't ignore me, Karl.
Well, okay. Well, anyway, hey Taylor, do you know that I have strong feelings about language frameworks for web development?
Which one could that possibly be?
Well, the world has gone mad as we've seen through the proliferation of these countless front-end JavaScript frameworks over the last 10 years. I'm going to get myself in so much trouble. Anyway, as you know, I'm very excited about today's guest because I really think that Ruby and Rails are a framework for the ages, and they have been so helpful to me in my professional career, and I find so much pleasure from using them. And today we have a special guest, Kirill Platonov, Shopify developer focusing on app development using Rails as the framework, and he's here to tell us all things about how amazing Ruby is and Rails, and why after this conversation and this episode, everyone's going to throw React into the Rust bin and move into the future with Turbo and Stimulus and Rails. So, Kirill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for introducing me. Really happy to be here and tell you why Rails is the best choice for you.
That's right. No,
This is gonna be good. This is because Karl is just super happy that he's not alone here and being
right.
the constant voice on Rails is the way here. So I'm a big Rails fan. Not nearly as experienced though, so I'm really interested to hear more. So thank you for coming on today, man. It's huge.
Yeah, thank you. And just to be clear, those listening, I'm totally open-handed when it comes to languages and frameworks. The best tool for the job is really what my motto is, but I think if you use Ruby and Rails, it's hard not to enjoy it. Anyway, so Kirill, tell us a little about your background. We love to know how people get involved in development in general, but also specifically Shopify development and Ruby. So tell us your story.
Yeah, I've been doing development for about 13 years already. It's quite a big number for me. Started from PHP in school. I was learning how to program, how to do stuff, and actually started my first freelance projects while being in school. It was pretty cool. Made first money in the internet. After that, in the university, my friend convinced me to try Ruby. I was skeptical at first because I was pretty happy with PHP, it's perfect language. Why do I need something else? I can do anything with it, but tried the language, started learning it using available online resources, and actually fell in love with language, and decided to switch to it from PHP. Learned it to a comfortable level, started picking up freelance projects, and actually on the second year dropped my university to become a Ruby programmer.
It's awesome.
And landed to my first full-time job. And actually never looked back since then. So it was a great decision. After that, I've been working on a bunch of startups as a Ruby and Rails developer, getting experience, but I always wanted to build products myself and deliver to users without having a job, actually owning the project. And it was difficult to find something to work on and to monetize. So first time when I looked at Shopify ecosystem was 2017, when I was switching jobs, and I actually looked at Shopify App Store and was thinking that it would be great to have an application that I can sell to merchants. But I didn't have any experience running Shopify store, or even selling myself in the internet. So it was difficult to find an idea for an app, and also the marketplace itself looked crowded. It was already 3,000 or 4,000 apps this time.
In 2017.
I was just looking and thinking everything is already solved. All problems are solved. I wish I made the different decision at this time and built something actually, but not. So I just continued with my career as developer. And the next time when I looked at the ecosystem was 2020, when I was doing performance optimization for one of my clients. It was Ruby on Rails project. and I was improving backend of the app, but also the front end, like how things are loaded, how to get a good page speed number, stuff like that. And after that, I decided to check what's going on in Shopify in this term. And it was a good time for this because Shopify actually introduced speed metric to the admin at this period, and all merchants became obsessed with like raising this number.
Uh-huh.
And I decided it would be great to like help some merchants with it. So I landed at a bunch of Upwork jobs and started helping merchants improving their stores. It was quite different from my normal job. Like it was exciting just to make some money and get experience, but I was able to work with like 20 plus merchants, both regular merchants and Shopify Plus. And it gave me good understanding of what's going on, what Shopify themes are, how things are working, what kind of apps merchants are using, and probably the most dramatic experience is what bad written app can do with the performance and with the theme, like how it can ruin source code and lead to a bunch of errors, all of this stuff. So after this experience, I built my first app, Speed Audit, and published it to the App Store. It was a simple tool to make a quick audit of your store and showing you performance issues. I published it to the App Store, and it was a free tool. My plan was to eventually build a paid version of it, which will be optimizing automatically your theme. But it never happened because I got 1-star review in the beginning, and it destroyed my traction. Someone complained about a free app, so I have to shut it down and change plan. And after that, I decided I will never go back to building anything for free. So it became like clear that I need to build paid apps and focus on monetization because it attracts different kind of people, different kind of merchants.
If we could take a break right there, I'm curious, Kirill, when you did that first app, what was the Rails ecosystem like around Shopify at the time? Because, Shopify is a Ruby-based Rails project, one of the biggest ones in general. So it's always been sort of a spiritual realm for Rubyists. But obviously, we've seen some shifts in terms of their emphasis on what tools front-end developers should be using these days. But at that point in time, this is what, 2020, you said?
Yeah.
What was the experience like? Was there a lot of support? Was there a gem? Was it hard to know even where to get started?
Yeah, it was a period when standalone apps still were a thing, and most of the people just built an independent app that worked outside of admin with its own UI, like they can use anything. And it was pretty easy to integrate since you just authorizing a merchant, and that's it. Everything else is done inside Rails app. But it was also a period when the transition to AppBridge started. So I'm not sure about years, but at this period, I already was building embedded app because I wanted it to work inside admin. I wanted to be in iframe. And in this period, the cookie issue started to appear. Like previously, it was easier. You just doing normal authorization and app just works, but a browser started restricting cookies, and it becomes harder. So Shopify actually started introducing things like AppBridge to solve this problem, to avoid cookies. And at this time, I wanted to use Polaris, and I was using React on the front ends and Rails on the back end. And my experience with it was like, I'm not a front-end developer, I'm a full stack Ruby developer. So I wrote a bunch of code, and I remember like few months later opening it and having a really hard time to like launch everything and even understand some of the pieces because there is no much conventions in React. You write in everything however you want, and navigating this compared to like clear Rails structure was a pain. So that was a snapshot of experience at this period when I built the first app.
Interesting. Yeah.
Go
ahead.
After that, another thing happened. My wife launched her brand Click and Slick, on Shopify, and this changed everything because I was responsible to like helping her launching the store, like setting up team and everything, products, and it gave me a great experience of learning the merchant side of things, which problems you have as a merchant, like how do you pick apps which you want to install, like stuff like that, and we started noticing some issues, like some problems which are not very well covered by apps. The first problem was running sales and calculating prices. Like we tried to find a solution, a good app that can do it, and we had various problems with existing solutions. So I thought it might be a good idea to build something in this space. And I launched my second app, bulk price editor. And short after that, I participated in Shopify App Challenge. That still was a thing. And built another app the same year. It was Platonov swatches. And this time I made it completely differently. I decided I don't like the experience of mixing Rails and React together. I don't feel it like a good way to build and stuff. So I decided I will go for the pain of like making Rails work properly with Shopify. And I started doing this, and like I decided to try making turbolinks work well with AppBridge. And actually, it was a time when Rails introduced a replacement for turbolinks, Hotwire. So I decided I even abandoned turbolinks and will use the new thing, shiny thing. So I focused my efforts to make it work with Shopify, and basically started gluing in AppBridge together with Hotwire in order to make things work smoothly for server-rendered apps. It worked well for my apps, and this part was solved. But another issue came up that I can't use Polaris.
Well, hold on
Polaris
a second.
is for React only.
Before we get to the Polaris part, let's back up. So for those that aren't super familiar, can you explain on a technical level, like what AppBridge does, what that's supposed to solve for Shopify apps?
Yeah. So AppBridge basically is authentication, which is provided to load your apps securely inside iframe. So embedded apps are loaded just a web page inside iframe, and you need to authenticate merchant first. And after that, once you're authenticated, you also need to make calls to Shopify admin to do various actions. For example, if you want to show a model inside Shopify admin, you make a call through AppBridge. You basically telling Shopify, show this model with this content, and you need some way to communicate between your app and Shopify. So AppBridge is basically doing this communication between. And normally it requires you to build a single page application. So it requires you to stay on the same page, basically not reloading the page, because when you're reloading the page, you're losing all the state. And this is where Hotwire fits perfectly, because it basically gives you an experience of SPA without going into SPA. So you just keep writing your normal app, a server-rendered app, and Hotwire will handle all the complexity. So your forms will be submitted remotely without like reloading the page. Navigation between links will be done without like leaving the page. It will all just update the content of the page, but you will still stay the same place. And this concept works perfectly with AppBridge. So you can basically, if you can map Hotwire with AppBridge, you can basically give developers smooth experience, so they can continue develop server-rendered apps without like getting all of the trade-offs of SPA and jumping into React and all of this.
So you did that work and you figured it out, but you didn't just keep it to yourself, right? You began pushing it back to the official gems and to the other places where people could all benefit from it.
Yeah, I tried to open source it because I thought it will be great if it will be a more popular approach. Because I was looking for something like this when I was starting and I couldn't find any solution. I was referring to official repositories and I couldn't find anything to lead me there. There was some template from Shopify for turbo links that wasn't updated. It wasn't compatible with all modern stuff, and it's still there. It's like abandoned. So I decided I'd like to share my own way. So basically extracted stuff that I built for myself, made it open source. This led me to contributing to Turbo because I was needed to tweak some things, make it work with this inside Shopify. And a few more Rails libraries as well. But also I published a sample, Shopify Hotwire sample, which is basically an example how you can do the same yourself. And it became pretty popular in the community because it basically gave people a tool how to do the same with Hotwire, how to link things together. Yeah.
That's so cool, Karl. Especially when you're doing this because you're trying to develop a paid app and compete in a crowded app store, right? And so to at the same time be so open-handed with some of the key tech that you're having to solve the problems and a lot of work you're putting into it, I think that's part of what makes this community of developers so great. Is you see that a lot in Shopify. So thanks for doing that. Really appreciate it for my own purposes, and I know people appreciate seeing it too. I'm curious, since you have been so open-handed, what's your experience been like in terms of working with Shopify and the people that are responsible for maintaining sort of the Ruby and the Rails integrations and libraries? Have you found them to be pretty responsive and easy to work with?
It's been different over time. Like
Yeah.
at some point of time, it feel like things are abandoned for Ruby space, but then Shopify made some improvements. They hired people and changed some processes inside. And right now, it feels like tickets are pretty. Like the team is pretty responsive. They're responding to tickets. They're accepting pull requests. So I feel the improvement right now. I feel that it's alive, and at least we can keep what we have working. They don't move into the direction of accepting Hotwire as a first-party solution, but still we can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
So at least.
Well, we'll put a good word in with Toby again, right, Taylor? If you ever find this again,
I know we have some connection there.
Let's see if we can stress. Well, I think that's cool. I think you had some recent interactions too on Twitter that I saw as well, Krill, where you had kind of talked about that. There was some back and forth with Toby, and you kind of like chimed me off saying like, hey, like we really need to like bring Rails back into the conversation of being like a super solid choice instead of like everybody's reaching for some brand of JavaScript for everything, which is fine, right? And they want to be broadly appealing. But I do, you still see that a lot, that affinity for Rails. So, and just, between like, I'm a baby Rails developer. I'm as much of training wheels as possible. I'm a front end dev, trying to get in the mix with this. And I had tried playing around with Shopify's own little like starter, right, for Rails. And like, it's just brutal. Versus, when I was working with yours, like everything just like, oh man, this thing just fired up. Like, how exactly how it should. And so, you can kind of see the difference there in the implementation. Some of that obviously is my own skill set. But I think, you've obviously got, you've made some great advances there. So it's very, very cool that you've made that something open source and people can also support you as well on GitHub. So we'll definitely make sure that we include that because your work definitely needs to be supported there. Now you do have you've got more than just the Swatches app too, right? Like you've got that one, which you've got a couple apps on the App Store currently.
Yeah, I have 3 public apps right now. So the old one is Price Editor. The second one is Platonov Swatches, and the new one is Platonov Size Chunk. This is the app that I launched just this year, like a few months ago.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's been a great like way to polish my stack as well, and I will publish an update soon to what I learned. and it was a great place to try all of the things Shopify introduced recently: meta objects, web components, modern theme extensions. So it's been a pleasure to develop in it.
Yeah,
Nice.
and you're using the same. Well, you've got the template, you've got the starter and stuff, open source, and stuff. But like you're using that same base for these apps that are in the App Store. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I basically iterated on it. I tried to upgrade to AppBridge CDN, which is the latest version of the AppBridge, and it allowed actually to simplify a lot of stuff. So things that took some efforts previously right now are more or less effortless. So I think I was able to get the best both development experience and also UX. So the app works very fast, very smoothly, no errors, and like this is the best quality that I could ever get building for Shopify.
Yeah, well, and so again, like it's awesome. I love seeing folks like contributing to open source, just because like that makes it appealing. It's appealing not just for people like me who are maybe front end devs trying to get a foothold somewhere in the app space, like these really helpful starting points and those sorts of things, but also like you mentioned too, like experienced devs coming into the system and having to learn Shopify, and like, oh, Rails is a familiar space, and now we have a starter where we're kind of oriented to how things are supposed to work in this system. So I think like the draw for that is huge on both sides. So I'm sure Shopify to some degree has got to be pretty grateful for folks like you putting in the hard work there. I thought it was like really interesting when you were talking about like your experience. For one, I didn't realize that you got your experience kind of like cutting your teeth in the space, like freelancing just in general, which is really cool. All about that. Karl and I are very pro freelancing and consulting work and those sorts of things. But just how helpful it was for you to kind of get that initial bit there. I think, and this is not Rails specific, so like Karl, we can get back to that here in a second. But a thing that I wanted to latch onto that I thought was really interesting that you mentioned early on was in 2017, checking out the App Store and seeing like 3,000 to 4,000 apps on there and being like, this is crowded, and moving on, and eventually coming back. But I think that's so interesting because that's the conversation that everybody has today, right? It's just like there's 13,000, 14,000 apps on the App Store now. Like there's no new app. It's way too crowded. But now, like you started in 2017. Wish you would have started then. Circle back around several years later when it was probably closer to 10,000 at that point in time, and like seeing the potential there. So I don't know if what do you say to people when people say like, oh, this is crowded, or this isn't a space worth trying to develop anything in?
Yeah, I wish I could move back to 2017 and change my decision, but I think the best way to build an app is today, basically.
Yeah.
And it will be always true, because I think there will be 20,000 apps at some point in the App Store.
Yeah.
But also new opportunities are being available all the time because Shopify is changing. They're introducing new APIs. They are deprecating old approaches how to build things. So we will always have new problems to solve, and it's always possible to find some strategy to compete. Even if the marketplace is super crowded, it's possible.
That's awesome. So your wife opened a store on Shopify, and that helped you kind of get like the merchant perspective of those sorts. Is the store still around? Like we'll link to it in the show notes. That's awesome.
It's growing, and we keep improving it, launching new products, expanding. Yeah, it's actually, this is the best thing that any developer can do, is like convince his wife to build a store.
Convince your wife. One, get married, fellas, if you're single, and then two, convince your wife to open a shop.
Do it yourself, but it's a lot of work. Yeah, it
is a lot of work. Yeah.
And I think it's super helpful to just be in this on the other side and just understand problems, because we might have some view how merchants are thinking, but in reality they have so many things to take care of, and apps must just solve some problem for them, and it won't be a point of focus for them. The focus is their store, the focus is their business, and like marketing is more important than any app. Apps are just a side thing, solving some niche problems. So I think it's worth understanding this and like having some experience with selling as well.
That's awesome.
Now, before I derailed you earlier about the whole AppBridge thing, you were about to talk about Polaris and the work you had to do to get that to work. You want to continue with that thread?
Yeah. So one limitation was that Polaris is for React, and
That is a big
they only
limitation.
offered an HTML version of it for any other stacks. So basically, you have to grab HTML and you have to write your own JavaScript, and it was incredibly difficult problem because even if you pull in this HTML and put in it directly to your project, it will quickly become a mess. Like, you can't read your markup, you can't, like, it's difficult to maintain. And I've been doing this in the beginning, but then I landed on the project from that gamble, Polaris View Components. I guess it might be named slightly differently, but the similar idea. And it was open source. It was just a bunch of components, not wrapped as a gem, so you can't easily install it. You have to copy paste it to the project and then use it. And so, like, we discussed it, and I started working on this gem going forward, and basically turned it into a full-featured component library for Rails. And it's using Vue component from GitHub as a base for building this, and it uses Polaris as design system. So we basically mix these things together, and now we have full-featured Polaris on Rails for server-rendered apps available, so you can there easily create familiar interfaces in Rails apps. So I was able to fully solve all problems that you experiencing as a Rails developer in Shopify ecosystem, and now you can build full-featured apps without reaching for React at all. So you can use Hotwire, Polaris View components, Rails, and it should be sufficient to build basically anything.
Wow, that's so cool, Kirill. This kind of thing you think about doing as a developer that has an impact like that. It's just so rare to see it come together. So that's quite an achievement that you made there. Is it a challenge to keep that in sync upstream with changes that they make to players? Like, are you the only guy maintaining it, or have you got any buy-in from Shopify for them to see the value and also contributing back to it?
Oh, no one from Shopify contributed to it. But yeah, the maintenance is a thing. Like, my side of things, like the interface for components is stable, and we basically never changed that since launch. But Shopify changed UI a few times. They made redesign for the admin, and every change like this is huge pain because, like, they're changing Polaris library for React very quickly, breaking things and all of this stuff, and some markup becomes more complex, and it's hard to port it. You have to rewrite things that used to work. And like, I've done it a few times. At this point, I'm hoping that at some point of time in the future, Shopify will land with a web component version of Polaris, because that's the only viable solution that could solve this problem. Like, I don't see anything else that would make it simpler. So I hope that will happen in the future. Let's see.
Fingers crossed. Well, and I think that's a neat. So that's a really important incorporation to this idea of like full stack Rails, right? Like, because I don't know, typically when people talk about Rails, you think back end, right? For the most part, because it's a pretty common pairing a lot of times. I should say maybe not you Rails devs, when we say full stack, think back end. Most of us non-Rails devs, when we hear full stack and you're thinking about Rails, like you're thinking like back end. Like, I know Rails is incredibly powerful, but really, so like incorporating like Polaris View components and Hotwire, right, into the mix is what really makes it full stack capable, at least in the Shopify world and those sorts of things, instead of having to pull in something like React.
Yeah, because the official library for, like, the official template from Shopify is actually using Rails as a backend API, and it's using React on the front end. So they're basically swapping the front end part of Rails. But this is actually not the best way to build apps on Rails in 2024. because in 2024 it's more productive to use Hotwire and Stimulus. It limits the amount of JavaScript you need to write. It basically makes a lot of things automatically for you, so you don't have to write the code for example, like form, submitting form and validating it. In React, you have to write some code for it. In Rails, you can get it almost for free, just by following very simple patterns, like you get in this functionality. If you will link various components to this list, you will get form which is integrated with Rails, looks like a Polaris, and works perfectly with Hotwire. So it's a perfect combination. Like you don't need anything else.
Well, and I feel like that's been like the biggest draw for React or JavaScript like based type frameworks, right? Is this idea you can be full stack with like Node.js or whatever, and I think that's so like this is an important conversation as far as like the shift of like, oh, like it doesn't just have to be JavaScript, right? Like you can be fully capable Rails full stack in Shopify, no problem. So I think that's kind of maybe part of the conversation. So again, like as a baby Rails, not more of a front end guy kind of type thing here, and like Hotwire is like new, right? And that's probably the piece that's been missing for a bit here.
Not so new. Before Hotwire, we had Turbolinks, and I was actually actively using it. In past, Hotwire only linked things together and polished IDs, I would say. Like they had Stimulus in the past, they had Turbolinks, and this is basically was Hotwire. But they rewrote Turbolinks into Turboid, some modern implementation, and just put a single name on this approach for building frontend. So it's just one common name, but the underlying stack has been for a while, and it has been battle tested, so it's not like new software.
Gotcha. Okay. But so it's just more so maybe the approach like that you're taking here in this instance, because it sounds like, because Shopify, even with their own starter, right, their little app starter for Rails, like they've got this death grip on React and they're not letting go kind of type thing. But so you're kind of like one of the first, at least few that at least is open source as to where like, hey, like this is full stack Rails, like front to back, like this is fully capable.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I know, like, if you will research the ecosystem, and I've been talking with a lot of developers, not so many big apps are actually using React.
Oh, really?
A lot of apps are built on Ruby, on Python, on PHP, and this is very common. If you will be looking at the top players in every niche, you will find a lot of variety in stack. So actually, pushing React doesn't make any sense because it won't bring value for the majority of developers. Like it can help some front-end developers to publish their own app because they are familiar with this stack. But for the rest, they won't be able to like use it. And I really like the direction with AppBridge that they picked, like the latest version, AppBridge CDN. They decided to use web components for it. And I think the direction is much better than forcing React because web components can be used in any stack. You can use it in PHP application. You can use it in Python, in Ruby. This is much more universal, and it's also backed by web standards. It's not like some proprietary thing from Facebook. It's a web standard which is accessible to everyone. So I think this direction is much better for the ecosystem. In general.
And that's a lot of like, even when you're building stuff on the storefronts, like it's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, man. Like, and you throw in some liquid. So it definitely makes more sense for it to be much more embracing of like standardized stuff instead of pulling in something like that.
Yeah, I built 2 theme extensions at this point. And in the latest one, I actually used web components, and it made things so much simpler. For me at least, like it allows you to encapsulate a lot of complexity and hide it, and simplify markup. And you don't have to pull any third-party framework. Like it just works in every browser already, so it's perfect.
So you said you built an extension using that, or you
theme extension.
Theme
So
extension.
basically, storefront widget for size charts and for color swatches. It's built as a theme extension with meta fills and liquids and
it makes it super easy too. The theme extensions for merchants too, just like they want to pull in a block or a section, just like they are like their regular theme extensions like that. That's just smooth, like when they incorporated that. So that's awesome, man.
That's cool.
For sure. I tried both approaches. I tried old one and new one with theme extensions. I like theme extensions more.
This is much easier. This is better. Well, probably like, like onboarding for merchants too, as opposed to previously if you had to, so like previously what you were like injecting something with like the assets API or whatever before, or like if you're like, hey, copy this like include snippet and drop it here, and you're trying to walk merchants through that, as opposed to now it's just like, oh, just go set up this block in your theme, put it wherever you want, like that's so much easier.
Much smoother experience for sure.
Mm-hmm. You got me excited there for a second, because I feel like, some of the other extensions and functions are areas where I'd like to also be able to reach for Ruby, not necessarily Rails all the time, right? But at least Ruby. And so now that you've conquered Polaris and AppBridge for Rails, can you go and work on check out extensions and functions?
He can only do so much, man.
Oh yeah, that's a different area. Yeah, I haven't worked closely with checkout extensions, but you can also use native JavaScript there. As I remember, you don't have to use React. You don't force.
Yeah, I'm not. It's not about React hate as much. It's just
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can use vanilla JavaScript. I think like a lot of this, you're just gonna end up using React because it's a lot easier too. With even like the examples and stuff that they provide, like some of that stuff's just easier to hook into or whatever. Just having hooks, like and stuff like that you can use is a big deal as well, right? But it is nice. It's pretty smooth. We were talking about this before. Getting to play around with your starter template. And just how smooth that was, like just generating some extensions, because that's something as a theme dev, like I've been looking into, just an app to make it easier for merchants of stuff that I'm building in regularly for them. And web components makes that even easier. So, standardizing some of your stuff as well. So that's huge. And I know we wanted to talk about a little bit like Rails making this simpler as far as like the complexity with app development. I think we kind of covered that piece, right? Like with how like you can really do it full stack, like front end, back end, everything. Like Polaris View Components makes it a thing, because people are going to want to. It's not that you don't have to use Polaris for like built for Shopify, right? It just has to follow specific design standards. And Polaris View Components does follow those standards as well. So even for people who are thinking about and building apps, Polaris View Components, it follows those same kind of standards anyways. Like it looks like Polaris, and so you're still checking that box there as well.
Yeah, I would add to this that this is not only about these pieces that I've added to this list, but also about what Shopify and what Rails is giving you out of the box. Because like building app, at least modern app right now, is a lot about pulling some data from Shopify and about using meta objects, using meta fields, synchronizing data with the API. And when you started working with API at scale, you definitely will have rate limits. You have to have strategy to fight this. And if you are using like mature stack like Rails, you have background jobs like Sidekick, SolidQ, which are basically giving you an easy tool to work with API. You can make all API calls in background. You can implement rate limit strategy. For example, Sidekick is offering to you like built-in or designed for GraphQL. Yeah. So it makes a lot of parts of development much simpler, so you don't have to like invent the wheel over and over. Like in a JavaScript ecosystem, you have to figure out a lot of this stuff yourself.
Yeah.
Here you have polished tools used at scale in various companies, and you can rely on them and just focus on like bringing value. I think this is the most important thing about this stack.
Yeah, rate limits and using a mature stack like Rails, that's a good thought. As a front end developer, I don't think about it so much, because I'm working in one store, I'm not working on that stuff as much, kind of type thing. So when you're having to, like you're providing an app at scale, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, cool. So, Kirill, let's just say hypothetically that I was going to start a new app and hadn't necessarily done one in a while. What would be your recommended approach for a developer getting started today, if they're open to the Ruby juice?
Yeah, I would start from looking at what Shopify Hotwire sample is giving you. So you can basically try launching this on your own and see what you have out of the box. This will give you a simple integration with Hotwire and AppBridge available, so you don't have to figure this out yourself. And this is probably the most complex part, from my experience.
Yeah.
Once you get this done, you can leverage all tooling that Rails is giving you. So you can probably even start from Rails 8 at this point already. You have a variety of choice in terms of database. You can pick SQLite or Postgres, depending on how far you want to go.
Sure.
You have Polarity components for the front end, and you have Hotwire Turbo Stimulus to make any complex interactions to the app. If you build in an extension, for example, if you want to build storefront widget, you will need to reach for theme extensions, checkout extensions, and inevitably work with meta fields and meta objects. So you will need to put data to Shopify, sync it with Shopify. In this case, you will need Shopify GraphQL to work with API. So this is another gem that I maintain. Makes it much easier to work with GraphQL. It removes a lot of pain from this process. And also, you can leverage background jobs that Rails is giving you free, like SolidQ, Sidekick. It all helps you to basically solve the problems working with APIs. So this is pretty complete list of what you need to build an app that can be both working on the background, on the backend side, or if you build in stuff for the storefront, you can also leverage this stack to make things simpler for you. So, pretty complete stack.
Now, does that stack also handle webhooks?
Yeah, but webhooks are much simpler these days. So you can use managed webhooks, and you can leverage Shopify app gem, which I'm also using in this template, which basically handles this view. So you can write handlers for webhooks and all this problem.
Nice. Yeah, that's amazing. That was kind of my impression as well in terms of what it would take to get that off the ground. And it's so nice to see you bringing all those tools. And you touched on the GraphQL piece. Obviously, this is kind of a current and present thing as Shopify's really gone whole hog on getting everyone over to GraphQL. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit. What are your views on the transition from REST to GraphQL only?
Yeah, I was expecting that transition is coming when they first announced it for products API. And now they announced it for the rest, for the API as well. So I think it's a good direction overall because it's a huge pain for both Shopify and developers to have two APIs which are not in the full parity, and some API supports one method, another API supports another method, and you basically can't write an app from 0 to 1 using one API. You have to do you have to combine it in your app, right? And that's what I've been doing for this period of time. But of course, the transition itself will be challenging for every developer because it's a completely different concept. When I was first trying GraphQL, it was difficult for me to understand the concept, even with my experience in development. And when I did understand it and started to be comfortable with making queries and mutations, it was difficult in terms of integrating it into my application code because it requires a lot of boilerplate to make simple things. It's really difficult. You have to use a pretty specific approach to handle errors, and there are a variety of different error types which you have to handle. There is no conventions in GraphQL. You can put it everywhere. There's no guidance basically how you should structure it in your app. So that was the reason why I created Shopify GraphQL, and I think it should be helpful for our developers, even if you're using JavaScript or PHP or stacks. Just looking at these patterns, at examples, how things are done, because you can make your own version for your project or maybe open source it for another stack to just squeeze some of complexity of GraphQL, make it a bit less painful for your application code. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Have you found the new .dev assistant helpful in writing some of those GraphQL queries? I think that was one thing that they've referenced a lot is, hey, use the new .dev assistant in the docs. Have you found that to be actually helpful?
It appears everywhere. Yeah, I had a problem this recently when I was struggling to find some attribute in the API. And I wrote a question to Dev Assistant, and it basically gave me a ready-to-use example that I could copy-paste to my project. And since that, I'm a big fan, and I'm keep using it, especially when you just have an idea what you want, and you just need the query notation. I think it's no-brainer to just ask AI, and it will give you. And you can also probably a reply right now, to polish the answer. I guess it's a new feature.
Oh, you can reply now even too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's new. I
saw Liam
didn't even see
mentioned it in Twitter. Yeah,
Liam,
it's probably available.
He's all over it, man.
Yeah. So I think GraphQL, it's a good direction overall, but it will require a lot of efforts from developers and also from Shopify because there is no full parity at this point yet. Some attributes are not available, and one another problem that I recently stumbled upon is the access scope for the same information in different APIs are different. So, for example, you can get primary locale in REST without any specific access scope. But if you want to get it in GraphQL, you have to use shop locales endpoint, and it requires you read locales access scope, and you can't get it retroactively. You can't just fetch this access scope for your existing merchants. They have to open the app, they have to approve new access scopes, and only after that you will be able to pull this data. So I stumbled upon this in multiple places, and I think this is also an area that needs to be improved in order to make migration easier, because otherwise it will be really challenging to handle this.
Yeah, it's frustrating, even from from my perspective, providing services to clients, and you go in to access something you were able to access last week, and you can't get to it, and you've got something due, or in the case of you've got a production app, it's hey, we've been serving this merchant, and they need this functionality, but then if you can't get into it, and I have to send an email, they can't just one click you, and I'm hey, there's this new permission that I can't access these things now. So can you add this, please? So yeah, that's a real frustrating, a rough spot for apps, to have to deal with that too. That's a big deal. So when that happens, you kind of have to essentially wait or gate functionality until those scopes get approved.
Yeah, I'm basically checking if the scope is available or not. Depending on this, I limit in some features because I can't do anything about it.
Right.
That's great. Well, you know me. I could talk about Ruby and Rails till the cows come home. Is there anything else we want to make sure we cover before we transition to the changelog?
Oh, probably not. I think we covered main topics that we
do. I feel like we barely
Well,
scratched
good.
the surface, but out of respect for people's time and the fact that no one will
Well,
listen to a 4-hour
and-
podcast.
And this is what we tell people, Kirill. If you come on once, you are also implicitly agreeing to come on again in the future, so
my
Karl
God.
can talk more.
It was in the
about
contract
Rails.
that you
So
signed.
That contract. you
Where
signed.
is this contract? I have to read it.
It's in the DM. It's all white text.
Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
Karl.
So, oh man, I guess what to think about after this conversation. Taylor, you want to transition us to the
we'll
changelog?
shift a little bit to the changelog here, and then we can bring some other things in as well. But so one thing that didn't make it to the changelog, but I wanted to make sure we talked about, was the new .dev community forum. So I'm not sure if y'all had a chance to hop in there yet. This is not in the changelog again. This is just like, I'm not sure why it's not. But saw this like come out. I think I had seen Liam post about it or something like that on Twitter, and I was like, oh, geez, there's a new community forum, so you can sign up for that here. We'll drop the link in the show notes and stuff or what have you. But it looks like Shopify is kind of like transitioning away from the traditional community forums that we had, and now we're going to have just one for developers and partners. And so make sure to check that out. They are pushing people that way as well from the future. Even some, I've seen even some stuff in the partner Slack where they're like, hey, like, move these requests over here. And so I think there might be a little bit of a shift in that direction in the future. We'll just have to see. That's all purely speculation at this point. But yeah, make sure that you go there, you sign up, lots of good info in there as well. And so I've also seen you can get there's some swag. They're promising some swag as well. If you answer some questions and different things, you get these badges. So
you got a badge already. I'm so jealous.
Well, you get, the first couple of badges you get for just like doing stuff like, reading, or like updating your profile or whatever. So
I
like,
haven't gotten that yet.
I've got some badges. I've got some badges, like I'm on it, but make sure, if somebody's listening to this comes out like a couple of weeks from now. If you're not in there, go there and sign up. Links are going to be in the show notes. But so the actual changelog portion, I did see that there's been some updates. I don't think we talked about this last time. Karl, you might have to correct me here. But I guess I could actually just check my last links. So the build for Shopify, they've updated their grace period for programmatically assessing different criteria. So they're extending it to 60 days. Currently it's 30 days. And so it's just something to be aware of. They're changing some of that. So that seems like a positive thing, I guess. So if people are like going after built for Shopify, make sure to check that out. There's also in the changelog, there's the ability to the storefront API cart. You can now remove gift cards with the storefront API. Didn't realize you could remove gift cards or could not remove gift cards from storefront without before. So check that out if that's helpful for you in some way, shape, or form. If you're interacting with the cart, there's always some fun stuff in there. There is another one coming out. It's actually not until next week. It'll be out by the time people hear this podcast, but for us, in the changelog effective October 28th, there's a breaking change to CAPTCHA protection on storefront forms. So Shopify has been transitioning away from their other CAPTCHA to this H CAPTCHA. I'm not sure y'all know about all the technical specs here, kind of type thing. But as far as like how they're handling like forms and stuff like that in the admin, so there's a full deprecation of reCAPTCHA on storefront forms as they're transitioning over here. So stuff like if you're dealing with interaction on customers, accounts and stuff like this or what have you, this is all kind of part of this like transition that they're doing with the classic customer accounts to new customer accounts, all this fun stuff. So be sure to kind of pay attention to that if you're dealing with any of that stuff currently, and you have to be worried about caption. Other thing, not effective until January 1, so just something in the future in the changelog as well. There's some new validation against duplicate handles for some of the mutations for like product update and product create, all this other stuff or what have you. Again, something that I was kind of surprised there's not something already existing in there, but obviously super helpful considering handles in Shopify for products are the unique ID that's like used in a lot of those instances as well. So just be sure to be aware of that if you're doing anything around creating, updating products. So that's the changelog.
so much. It's amazing how much they put together, in the span of 2 weeks between episodes. It's a lot of changes. It's good.
Well, we just recorded last week too, so
That's right.
yeah. So it's a lot of stuff, man.
That's cool. And in the background, Kirill, I had to check because it occurred to me while we were talking about the GraphQL things. Like, I wonder, did they ever update the Shopify API gem? Because it was based on active model, I think, right? So it's all REST, and it looks like they did. So you can query those models using either REST or GraphQL. So
Yeah, they
curious to see how
support
they
both.
did.
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious. So now we'll transition to the third half of the show. Okay. It's a little car talk thing. Where we talk about what we're working on and our pick of the week. So, since Taylor, you just went, Kirill, do you need a moment to think about yours, or are you ready? Because I can go first, but if you're ready.
I can go first.
You'll go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, which one? You or me?
I go first.
Okay.
Yeah. So, let's start from personal. On personal side, I'm packing up my stuff right now. I'm basically sitting in the room with boxes, and next week I'm going to move to Barcelona finally. So should be a big change for me. On the work side, this week I published a new version of Shopify GraphQL library 2.0, and so
Nice.
it's been a great release. Like I polished things that I updated, that I'm using in my apps, and now it should be a bit better to use it in Rails apps. And the pick of the week, I recently started using the cursor code editor. I was skeptical at first because I already have like VS Code with Copilot, and I'm paying for subscription. I don't want another subscription.
Right.
But like everyone, Twitter, like using this, and I decided to give it a shot. And it's pretty good. Like it gives much better auto completion for code, and you can also like the chart is better. Like it better understands the context. And so the code generation, you can ask it to generate code for you, and it also works so much better. I wish Copilot turned into something similar in the future, so I can skip the subscription, but the product itself, so far, is really good.
You're like the fourth or fifth person that's just like, oh yeah, like cursor, like you need to check it
You
out.
have to try it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm the
I've also
same. I
been
don't
using
want
it.
another subscription, but dang it, it's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
happening. There's too many smart people that say it's good, so
I haven't been using it without the paid subscription, and it's fine. I mean, I have to wait occasionally, but
what's the difference between the paid and unpaid? Are you just like
think-
limited on?
quicker access to the API. Sometimes it pauses while I wait.
See, and they'll get me. I don't want to wait. I'm impatient,
Remember-
Karl.
If anyone's wondering why the Pages Media Group's rates went up this week, it's because he had to fit in yet another subscription.
Sorry, guys. It's the cursor tax. You know.
Well, you'll get work done quicker, so because you're using it, so it balances out. Anyway,
That's what. Yeah.
thank you, Karl, for the update. Anything else you want to toss in there? You're good.
Oh no, that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go next. Then Taylor, you can bring home the bus. So personally, I've been enjoying fall. It's finally fall here in Ohio, which is nice. It's actually been a really warmer and dry fall, which has been pretty cool. And finally got away yesterday. Went for a hike at this place called Black Hand Gorge, which I've always wanted to check out, which is due east of Ohio. Well, central Ohio is where I live. And on the drive out there, I got to see the new Intel foundry plant. So they're building a big chip fabrication plant here in central Ohio. If the company still exists by the time that the fab plant is done, it'll be pretty cool. But it's like a mega construction site. It's pretty cool to see that. But yeah, it was a perfect, beautiful day out to be in the woods yesterday. Cold front had just gone through, so it was like partly cloudy, cooler, perfect leaf color. So that's my favorite time of the year. So really glad I did that. Been working on some app stuff. Upgrading an old Rails app. Man, you might feel my pain, Karl. I'm stuck on an older version of the Shopify Rails gem, and I'm a little nervous to upgrade it because I know in the past it's been a little painful. So I'll have to just go for it one of these days. And yeah, planning out a new app project as well. That'll be doing some stuff in the cart. So I'm trying to think through, now that it's 2024, I got to refocus on what the best approaches there are. And then for the pick of the week, actually, you made me think of this, Kirill, because he was moving to Barcelona. So there's a cartoon that I watched when I was a kid called The Mysterious Cities of Gold. It actually came out in 1982. I didn't watch it then. I'm not that old. Watched it a little bit later, and it was great. It was one of my favorite cartoons. And then, luckily, thanks to the power of the internet, you can still kind of find it online today and watch it or buy it. But then I didn't realize this because my kids really got into it, which is why I've been rewatching it. But there's apparently a season 2 that came out in like 2012. So like 30 years later, 40 years later, they come out with another season, and a season 3 and a season 4. And so a lot of it takes place in and around Barcelona, or at least parts of the story do. So if you're like, it's this weird like cartoon Japanimation style sort of thing, early days, right? But it's a really good story. Focuses on the cities of gold, Incas, Mayas, Spanish conquistadors, all that kind of stuff. And then season 2 takes it to the east. So check it out if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
Sounds cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, that's very cool.
It's got a good theme song too, which I'll sing to you once we end the recording.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna cut that part out. Yeah, after the recording. So me for this week, professionally, just getting stuff ramped up and ready for Black Friday. So got a couple of things that I finally got buttoned up and shipped, and with a couple of folks, and then I have a couple launches next week for features, and then hopefully I can talk everybody else into just playing it cool through most of the month for anything that's like critical, like let's not mess with the cart the whole month of November, please, kind of type thing. But we'll see how it goes. When Kirill knows, like doing the freelancing and working in services, sometimes you just, you can make good suggestions, but people don't have to listen to you. So end of the day, it's their shop. And so, so just a lot of fun stuff there. I've been doing a little bit more with some customizations around apps, and I've been really grateful for apps that provide good documentation for us theme devs to do some customization stuff with their app and those sorts of things. So not every merchant has that capability, obviously, to do, but it is nice when we're folding in an app and there's some docs for how we can make that work and look and feel native to the shop. So I'm always grateful for that. When that happens, I've been doing quite a bit more of that than I normally do, kind of type thing in the past month or so. So shout out to that. Personal life, we're just, kids are getting ready for Halloween. That's all that's going on my end of things. And they're finally taking a break from the sports. My daughter had her last soccer game of the season, probably for the year, because there's not another soccer deal here or whatever on Saturday. So that's done, and we're back to kind of having the weekends again in most of our afternoons. So that's really, really nice. My pick of the week. So we were just talking about this before podcast started. So my wife and I, and apparently Karl and his wife, are going to look at celebrating our 15th wedding anniversaries next year. My wife and I have been looking, together. We're just gonna hang out. But we were looking at Barcelona. So we have been in anticipation of that. We're looking at like Barcelona, so Spain, Portugal, like that kind of type area potentially. So we have been brushing up on our Spanish. So I don't know if y'all have played around with the Duolingo app at all, but it's just a fun little app. They're gonna get me to pay for it because the ads on it are brutal in the paid version. And so I'm probably going to end up paying for it. But if it's worth it, it's okay to pay for it, But it's fun to some degree because my wife and I follow each other. You can follow each other or other people. And it's now, I've got notifications when she's ahead of me. Like, it'll be like, hey, Kendra's ahead of you in experience points right now. And I'm like, oh no, So it's fun. It's been fun. I took Spanish last was like a year in college. My first semester, and other than that, just haven't really touched it. So I don't know that much other than the basic stuff. So something that we're looking at. So Duolingo app has been fun for that. I saw some people recommend it, and it's neat. It's a pretty well done app for that stuff. So that's my pick of the week.
One of the most expensive parts of traveling is the accommodations, like finding a place to stay. If only you knew someone in Barcelona, Taylor, that you could stay with.
Expensive city.
Yeah,
in terms of accommodation. I need a big villa, like to accommodate a lot of people. Yeah.
See, there you go. We all get in.
More apps,
get a nice big Airbnb. Yeah, get some more apps on the store, right? Like now.
Shortly.
We'll do a Ruby commune in Barcelona. It'd be great. Kirill, it's been a pleasure, and we're so grateful to have you on the show, obviously, but just the impact you're having on the community too. And so we'll be sure to put some notes on how people can get in touch with you and especially support you and the work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll have a round 2 of this at some point, because I'm sure I have lots more Ruby questions, and this episode, I'm sure, will convert most people into Rubyists, and so there'll be a lot more need for some introductory material. So we'll get there. See.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ben. Awesome.
We'll see you guys on the next one. We need some kind of cool outro.
We do need a cool outro.
See ya.